Okay, good evening, everybody. We are on the Facebook right now, and this program is getting recorded. I'm Dr. Anu Mehta, and welcome all beautiful ladies today. And over to Anya.
Thank you. And let me start. This week, we start a series of interviews with 15 authors who have written their life stories in the book, I Am Every Woman. Thank you, Anu, for sharing your platform here in Mumbai with all of us. 15 authors from across the globe who have contributed to this book. Each woman had an untold story and unsolved pain. We connected during the pandemic with our most vulnerable part of self to create this amazing book. For the next 15 weeks, you will have the opportunity to listen to the authors, and maybe some of the life stories will resonate with you. And now it's a great honor for me to introduce you to Susan Devine, our first author. Susan Devine was born in Puerto Rico and has lived on 4 continents in 10 countries and 17 cities around the world. She's an honors graduate of Cornell University and a 30-year veteran of the hospitality industry with extensive experience in on-property and regional sales, marketing, and hotel management. She was most recently Global Executive Vice President of Preferred Hotels and Resorts and board member of the FCC Collection of Hotels in Cambodia. Susan currently resides in Asheville, North Carolina, with her husband, Frank. And they have 2 grown children, ages 25 and 23. Susan currently volunteers extensively for 4 Seasons Hospice and enjoys family, sports, healthy living, and travel. Now, Susan, before we start, we have a little surprise for you.
Okay.
In India, it is customary to offer a gift when you enter someone's house. Here you're entering the Zoom of Anu. Now, Binaifa, I had this special request. Thank you for accepting to come and show off your talents. I am so happy you accepted our invitation to participate in our launch here in India. I Am Every Woman with Dr. Anu Mehta.
Thank you.
Binaifa's true calling came when she left her successful job into administration and hotel management and started pursuing the metaphysics and holistic path in 2004. What started merely as learning Reiki to heal self went on to make her a Reiki master, as a result of which she went ahead and learned other modalities like tarot reading, angel card reading, quantum healing, cowries, meta health, sound bath and therapy, access consciousness, and much more. Today, she's a veteran in her field and caters to high-profile clients as well. Binaifa, I would like you to start with a reading for Susan, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you, Anu, for giving me this opportunity again. Thank you so much.
You're always welcome, Binaifa. Just show them what the cowries look like, because I don't think people know what cowries are.
Okay. Give me a minute. I will just remove the phone from the stand because I have put some crystals around it. Just give me a second. Okay. So this is the cowrie chart. These are the cowries, which are known as shells. So each shell is painted with a different image, which signifies something. and each image around the chart again signifies something. So this is the entire chart, and we ask a question and we cast the cowries on the chart, and the formation it makes once it is cast, that is how we read the and get the answers.
Thank you so much.
So I'll start with Susan, right? Okay. So Susan, for you, what I'm getting is your attention is right now and your focus is at home. So what is happening at home and how you can, make your life better at home, your space better at home. You're really working towards that. Relationships might be a little strained right now, but you just need to um, look at it from a different perspective. So maybe that will sort out things over there. You need to also focus a bit. What I'm getting on is some meditation, some chanting. If you do that, that is going to really smoothen your road ahead. And it will also give you a sense of protection, a kind of aura around you where you feel safe. So do that. And if you feel that is also, again, if you're feeling a lot of negativity around you, so if you feel that things are draining you or energies are draining you, then you need to do this sort of meditation or some sort of chanting to keep a protective aura around you. Money will come your way soon. You just need to intuitively know how to tap into the resources that you have, and through that it's going to really flow. So just wait, it is there and it's coming. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Pinaifa.
Thank you.
And now I would like to hand over to the two main actors, Anu and Susan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Susan. And thank you to each and every one on this platform. Is my voice clear?
Yes.
So I want to thank each and every one of you because you are bringing something in my life that's very, very difficult for me to cope up with. I have always been someone who's aspired to write, but I've always given excuses as to why I should not be completing certain projects which connects with writing. I've always joked and said, for me to read and write is rather difficult even though I've done my PhD. The point is not how many degrees you get, it's about expressing yourself. And it's about putting that part of you out there, which may be sometimes very difficult to express. In fact, Dr. Rashmi Arora, who's right now there on the forum, is somebody who sits down and edits for me many, many times because I'm unable to make sense of words. They turn in twist in front of me. I met Suzanne last week for the first time in my entire life, and my life changed. My life changed because here is a lady who's so sensitive, so full of beauty, so full of amazing stuff that she can share it with you and with everyone else. I have a feeling that your life is never going to be the same again after you hear Suzanne share her story with us. So, Suzanne, my first question to you is, why would you come up with a topic that's really like life, death, death, life, like death? How did that topic kind of brew inside you and you wanted to bring that up on the paper? What really motivated you? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anu, for having me and giving me all this time really to talk. And I'll be as honest as I can with your answers, but with my answers to your questions. What, you know, it was really an automatic for me. It was what I knew I needed to write about, because even though I hadn't thought about death at all for the first 40 years of my life, once my mother had terminal cancer, and I went through that process with her, and then losing my dad and getting a cancer diagnosis, all of this happening in a 50-year time frame really brought death to the forefront. And I realized that it's good to think about our own mortality, that we shouldn't ignore death, or we shouldn't assume that we will, we can sweep it under the rug and then move forward. That it's in understanding death, we understand life a lot better. We understand the priorities in life. I've really, during this time period, in taking care of my mother, being with my mother, having those conversations that were really, really meaningful, and then doing the same again with Dad, really allowed me to grow tremendously. I think it's been the time period in my life where I've grown most. And I've had a wonderful life. I've traveled, and I've had a great career and raised two wonderful boys. But if I put, I don't think that, we learn more necessarily in our younger years, because when I was faced with death and started to think about it, I realized that this was the period of my life where I'm really learning the most. So that's why I chose this time period of my life, or death really, as my topic. But I know it sounds it sounds negative, and when people say death, but it's really about life, and it's how to live life. Because if you know how to die well, you know how to live well, because your priorities, your sense of spirituality grows, and you become a better person as a result. So, and then some of the supernatural things that I saw really opened my eyes up, with TVs going on by themselves and books falling to the floor, with nobody there. It just caught me off guard, and it encouraged me. I found the personal need to explore further. So rather than being saddened by death, I think it can be a beautiful time period. And I would like other people to feel that beauty as death approaches, and that to understand that there can be communication after as well. I think you're on mute. Anu, you're on mute. Yeah.
I really feel that, thank you very much for that. And I really agree with you that a person who cannot look at death cannot look at life. You can only fully connect with life when you fully understand that there is nothing called fear in death. So you spoke about paranormal experiences that you had, um, way before even your mom story happened, or dad happened, way back in time, like when you were really young, and your friend who met with an accident. Could you just take people through that how did you look at life and these paranormal, and how did you connect these things? Thank you.
Yeah. I first saw a microwave go on by itself. It was about 24 hours after a friend had died in a car crash. I was 25. I was living in Caracas, Venezuela, and she actually worked for me. I was the director of sales of a hotel, and she, on a Friday night, had gone out with one of the other people in the sales department, and she died in a car crash that evening. I went to the open service the following day, and I couldn't understand. She hadn't been drinking. It was a freak accident. It was going around the mountain. And I couldn't understand why somebody so young and so beautiful and so positive, their life would be taken so early. And I was sitting in my apartment on my own by myself, just about 24 hours after it had happened, and just thinking about her and why. And at that moment, the microwave went on by itself. Now, I was looking out the window, and the microwave was in the kitchen on the other side, but it's a relatively small space. I got up because I heard the noise, and then I saw the lights of the microwave. I immediately sat down, frozen. It went off, and I decided, okay, I think I'd better go to sleep now. I was living by myself, but I didn't accept it. And the next day, I didn't go near the microwave for probably a couple of days, and then I turned it on. It worked fine. Nothing like that happened again. So I didn't tell anybody. For years, I didn't tell anybody because I assumed, well, something freaky. I kind of knew that it had to do with the death of Patty, but I didn't want to accept it. I wasn't aware. It was too much for me. And I think that's what happens to many people. It's like you have to be ready to experience, to see the paranormal activity that happens, or the supernatural activity, however you want to call it. But as I matured, and as my mother had her terminal cancer diagnosis, I discussed it with her. I mentioned it to her, and I mentioned it to my husband. Those were the only two people that I had originally spoken with about it. And so when Mom was passing, I was aware, I had that period of time where I thought something could happen. So she knew that I would like something to happen, but we didn't plan for it. We didn't expect it. But when I was sitting by her bed, and this is when she was still alive, when she had the experience of seeing somebody who was receiving her, ready to receive her, is the way I interpret it. But she sat right up in bed, and she said, Mishu, is that you? And then she fell back in her bed. And at that moment, the TV went on by itself. Now, it took me a moment again, because I was like in shock, but the control was way over on the other side. There's no way that it could have gone on by mistake. And it showed static. It didn't show a program, but the TV had gone on by itself. So that to me was a beautiful validation that there is something beyond. Now, I will say, I kept looking for these experiences. And when you look for them, you don't necessarily find them, but you have to be aware that they're possible. And then they come at very unique times. So it was, my growth was over, it was 20 years between the microwave going off and then the TV going off with, when my mother was still alive, going on by itself, that really allowed me to open my senses a little bit more and to learn more about it. Anu, would you like me to talk a little more about some of the other experiences as well, or?
Susan, if we can go from here and speak about, in the hospital, when you asked people, they said that this was really common for the nurses over there and the doctors over there. It wasn't a big deal. Could you just tell the audience about it? Like, this is not something that you were imagining. This was something that others had experienced. Could you talk about that? Thank you.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I enjoy my volunteer work with hospice so much, because you see so many things like this happen. But the day after, my mom was, when she saw Mishu and she fell back and the TV went on by itself, it was the day after I asked the hospice people, I said, this is what I saw. And they weren't surprised. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, you see this regularly? And many, many hospice nurses will see this type of activity on a regular basis. So they will see doorbells ringing and there's nobody there, for example, pictures falling, doors opening or closing, TVs going on, lights flickering. And it all happens usually very close, leading up to death, very close to death, to a person dying, or afterwards. And afterwards, it happens when there's thought. So the question I had, well, why did I get a chance to see this? Because they commented they had seen it regularly, but there aren't many family members that see it. And they said, well, the person dying, your loved one, needs to know that you're open to it, that you are open to being shown that there is an energy or a spirit or whatever it happens to be, but there is something that goes beyond this life. You have to be open to it. And that's when I realized I wasn't open to it when the microwave went on. And I always wondered, why would the microwave have gone on? Like, why, if Patty was trying to show me something, why was it me that saw it? I wasn't a close friend. I'd worked with her and she'd gone, why did it come on when I was thinking about her? But I think it's because she thought maybe I was open and aware, and maybe it would be helpful for later in life. But I don't know that. But it happens much more than you think. And I was really surprised, when we published the book, I've had multiple people come back with me and say that other things have happened to them as well. What's interesting is that when it happens to them, they don't usually tell anybody. So many people have said, oh, that happened to me. Oh, I've been speaking with my husband who passed away 2 years ago. And I said, how do you communicate with them? And she says, I talk with him all the time and he flickers the lights. And there is a communication. And it's like, have you ever told anybody that? And she goes, no, they think I'm weird. And, and that's the way it is with so many people. But I can't tell you, it's been probably 8 to 10 people that I know who have read the story. And the first response is, wow, I've experienced very similar things. And I'd like to tell you my story. So it does happen much more frequently than we think. I think it's just the fear of being considered very strange and weird and seeing things that aren't real that scares people.
Thank you, Susan, for that. And I would really like to invite other people. I'm going to continue asking your questions after that. But I would really like other people, invite the people over here, if they have any question regarding this specific paranormal activity. If any one of you have any specific question or any sharing to do here, because I myself in something like that in my life, so I can completely understand how and what Susan is speaking about. But if any of you have experienced something or want to share something or want to ask Suzanne something on paranormal stuff, you can unmute yourself, put your hand up, and I can ask you to unmute, and then you can ask her. That would be really nice. Yes, Natalie, would you like to go ahead and ask her a question or share something?
Yeah, well, I'd actually like to ask a question, Susie. And I don't think I know we've talked about this before, but I don't think I've asked this question. So you talk about using your sight when these activities occur. I'm wondering if any of your other senses were engaged. Did you feel anything? Did you feel a current? Did you hear anything other than the sound of the going on and off? Kind of that. Was there any other sensory feeling around that?
Not at the time. but I'm more of a visual person. So what I've learned from all this happening and talking to more people about it is that it can, the spirit or whatever it is on the other side will use other senses depending upon what your awareness is. So I typically have seen things. And for me, seeing something allows me to believe it. It makes it more real. I've spoken with other people that have heard things, and they hear it very clearly, and there are messages that they receive very clearly, but it's all through audio. Other people feel, and in feeling a spirit close by and feeling that energy is something that some people, that's their way of communicating. So it can be any type of sense. It can also be tactile. And there are stories about, for a woman, for example, just told me her story day before yesterday after reading my story. And she said it was actually a cat that had moved in a different way than it normally would have moved, than a cat can normally move. So it was almost as if the spirit was acting through something else in the form of touch. So it's, I think there's so many different ways for this connection to happen. Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, lovely question. Anybody else wants to ask her anything or wants to share? That would be really nice.
Yes, Susan, I'd like to just ask, I know Natalie asked you whether you actually felt anything as in, energy or whatever, but just how did you feel, I suppose, mentally? Were you was it a shock, or was it, did it leave you stunned? What was this of the overall effect of what happened?
Well, when the microwave went off, it was fear. When the TV, 20 years later, 15 years later, when the TV went on, I was in shock. It seemed like it was a long period of time, but it wasn't. It was probably a minute that I let the TV on, and I kept looking at my mom, who I thought maybe was dead at the time, and then looking back at the TV. And as I asked Mom, should I turn it off? So it was shock. And then, but I was happy about it. Now, the third experience, I need to tell you about the books, and you have to read the story. But the books happened, and then the TV happened again with my dad. And each time I could tell that I had grown, because when the TV went on with my dad, I just walked straight into the living room. I was by myself. I looked at the TV. I knew it was his message. And I looked up and I said, "Thank you, Dad." I could be grateful by myself in my house with a TV going on and feeling completely comfortable and just grateful that my father was able to turn on that TV, which again validated what I'd seen before. Now, when the books went off, which was in between, my dad was still alive. My mom had passed. And this was an opportunity because my husband was with me. And actually, I was sitting in this exact same chair that I'm sitting in right now in my den. And my husband was sitting in the office desk chair. And it was on the bookshelf, which is a built-in bookshelf right over here. And Frank and I were having a conversation as to whether we should move Dad from assisted living to nursing, because they were pretty much saying, he's past assisted living, he needs nursing care. But the nursing care is completely different than assisted living. And assisted living was his home, only 5 minutes from me. So I really felt that we should be able to set up a home environment for him in assisted living rather than moving him to nursing. But I was about ready to give up on the battle because they didn't want to, assisted living, if there's a fall risk or, they say you're better off in nursing. So we sat here talking, and I was still traveling a lot and going back and forth. And it was about an hour of conversation. And I said, okay, I give up. We'll move Dad to nursing. At that exact same moment, 7 books fell from the bookshelf. Now, I knew it had to be Mom because she knew that that was the wrong choice, right? It was wrong to give up and do what everybody else thought, which was put him in a bed in a nursing home without the care and without the closeness that I was able to provide in assisted living. So I took the wrong decision. And it was my husband who got up. He was freaked out. He got up, he immediately put the books back on the bookshelf. And he said, do you think that was your mom? And I said, there's no doubt about it. It was Mom, and that was the wrong decision. But I needed the books to fall because I was taking the wrong decision. I wasn't listening to the messages. I started out fighting because I knew he was better off in the assisted living. It was 5 minutes from my house. I knew I could take care of him. But they didn't want me to do that. And I was finally giving up that fight when I needed another push. And that's when the books came. And I'm convinced it was Mom because it was a message that I needed to get. So we kept Dad there. And that's when I realized, oh, we can sign him up for hospice. And hospice gave that added support that we needed so we could keep him in assisted living. But when I was really happy that the books came down, because one, Frank could see it, so it wasn't all on me, right? It's kind of like, well, did you really see that TV go on by itself? He saw the books falling as well. So it's something that we can share, and there's a reality that this can happen. And it's not just at time of death or immediately after. It's also the way that I believe, it's the way that we receive messages all the time.
Wow.
And I think we have the opportunity to see so many messages. And it might be, we think, oh, it's just my gut feeling. But, usually your gut's right. Go with your gut, and sometimes we get swayed by other things, but these things happening allowed me to begin to see more messages. And I think they're all messages for us to hear and to know.
So I'm just going to unmute Anju. She's also experienced something like that. So that's amazing that we have more than a few people who've shared and their curiosity is increasing. So I would love her to share. Thank you, Anju. Really acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. I didn't know I was in for this when I joined, when I invited to this show. But thank you, Susan, for sharing that. And it just kept me wondering. I lost my dad in April, on 12th April. And very soon after that, when I was with my mom, I saw the bathroom lights flickering. And then I told her, this had to happen now since you're alone. Now you have to deal with all this. The moment that I finished using the bathroom, I came out, the lights came on by itself. It became all right. And we didn't need an electrician again after that. Again, when I used the bathroom, the light started flickering on. It's now that I look back and I wonder whether it was Dad sending a message to me or what it was. I think I should look out for these signs. Same thing happened at my own place, at my own house. My kitchen light went off at that time, and I didn't think twice about it. Now, since Susan has mentioned all this, maybe I'll keep a lookout for these signs and say hi to Dad in that manner. But one more thing was that a ceiling fan in my mother's house also went for a toss. It started making noises and stuff. And it was my nephew, the 11-year-old grandson, my mom's grandson. He said this must be granddad giving us some clue that it's time to change the fan. So I don't know, Susan, I really believe that these things can happen. And thank you for sharing your story. It makes us more aware of what we are in for. Thank you again, Anu, for inviting me on this session.
Thank you, Anu. And your story is wonderful. I do believe those are messages. You know, when I came from hospice this last week, I took a phone call right in front of the building of the hospice building where I was seeing 2 patients, and the lights flickered above. I went in and I told the person inside, I said, do these lights flicker out here all the time? And they said, they do. Regularly. We've had the engineer come and look at them several times, but there seems to be a problem with the circuit or something. And I said, well, I don't think there's any problem with the circuit. I think, but it's certainly, I'm 100% sure, you know, that's probably your relative, your loved one, and those messages are happening. So yeah.
It's a wonderful feeling, Susan. It's really wonderful to connect to those who have passed on in this manner. You know, instead of going into a fear mode, it's so beautiful to connect with them and be able to connect with them through these little signs throughout the day. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So thank you very much for that. Is there anybody else who would like to share? Because, you know, when we share, we understand that there is a unity and there is something that's happening that's beyond our imagination. It really did happen. And just to let all of you know, this happened to me when I was 14 years of age. My grandfather was very close to, he, uh, he left the planet Earth, and almost 6 months later was my birthday. And he would always give a call in the middle of the night, like, and say good morning and then wish me happy birthday. On that day, I remember fighting with my mom, celebrating my birthday. I go up into my room to change my clothes, and the lights went off. And then by the time I went to put on the lights were on again. And then I moved away from there saying lights are on, and the lights went off. And a voice went into my ears saying, "You forgot me. I didn't forget it was your birthday. Look at the time I'm wishing you at the same time that I wished you every year." I've never experienced that ever after that. Ever after that. So the day I was hearing from you, Suzanne, it felt as if I got in touch back again with my grandfather. So thank you
Mm.
for sharing that in your book. Is there anything
Mm.
you'd like to share on this? Okay, so my next question to you, Suzanne, is uh, there's a part where Dad says you need to be humble and you need to have that in your personality. What do you think he meant when he said to you, you need to be humble, you need to have humility, you need to be, because you look like you're a very, very, very beautiful person, very sensitive, then why would he say these words to you? Thank you.
Well, the words that he actually asked a question, and it was, "Are you humble?" And I felt that he had asked that question to allow me to think a little bit more as to whether really I am. My response was, I think I'm pretty humble, but not as much as I should be. And I think humility comes, you know, it's hand in hand kind of with ego. And I think if you have an ego, it's very hard to be truly humble. So you have to think less about yourself and be truly open without judgment, you know, to others, to truly be a humble person. But Dad had asked that because it related to his intelligence training. So I didn't know in all of my growing up years that my dad did undercover work for the CIA, for the intelligence agency of the United States. he was always he always worked for Goodyear tires, and that was all he did. And he traveled a lot and so forth. And I knew he had, at age 34, I learned that he had intelligence training. So it was in this conversation where he told me when he was actually coming out of the hospital that it was okay for me to talk about it. And I said, well, why, how come you never wanted, he's 86. And I said, how come you never wanted to share anything before? You probably could have, after you retired. I mean, certainly while he was in the midst, I understand I couldn't be told, family couldn't be told, nobody could be told. He was undercover. When it came out later, I asked, well, why now? And he goes, why didn't you ever tell anybody when you could have? And it was because he said, well, one, they tell you not to tell. And two, I'm humble. And his lessons when he was in his dementia and in conversation, he talked about how it's always the person who, everybody always gets caught. And they get caught because of ego. He didn't say it that way. The way he described it was they get caught. It's not the person taking the photo. It's the person taking the photo of the person taking the photo that gets caught. Because everybody eventually wants to be in the newspaper. They want to be heard. So you cannot do your work effectively in intelligence unless you are truly humble. And he didn't feel that he could live, that we should live without humility. So I think, the message was, when his question was, and he was always very good at asking me a question rather than telling me anything, because that was also part of his training. But the message to me was, I need to get rid of the ego. It doesn't serve any of us any good. And if you get rid of that ego and you are truly humble, then you're allowed to see your true self, right? You become your true self. And you really don't need anything else. And where you move forward from there, it's totally up to you, but never let the ego drive it. So humility is the basis for, and I think that was his message. Yeah.
Wow, that's like huge. And Anas, hearing you, I was just thinking, I'm really lucky to have met you, because this is one place people get caught. That was so fabulously put. Like, people get caught not because someone is photographing you, but because someone is photographing someone photographing you. So your need and desire to shine out sometimes can catch you in a loop that even you cannot escape. So it's not outside. It's beyond training. It's something that you carry with you. Wow. And tell me, how did you, would you say that in your profession you use this, or you held this? How did you use this advice?
Well, I think all growing up, I was never interested in money, but I was interested in success. I was interested in recognition. And I think, every night at dinner, my dad would ask, what was your success story for the day? And whether I had a success story or not, I mean, I had to come up with something. I wasn't leaving the table unless I came up with some kind of success story. And it didn't have to be getting an A. It could have been, I finished my swimming workout, or, we played a game and we did, but he always encouraged that, you look at finding something positive. I think that was his way of trying to teach me positivity. I think it took a long time, but it was especially with Dad, that I realized at the end of life, how successful you are is completely irrelevant to how well you die. Completely irrelevant. There is nobody who goes to their deathbed and feels happy to go to the next world because they look back at their life and they say they had a hugely successful career. And I've seen multiple people die now through hospice, and including, my mother and my father, and their deaths were very different. So everybody's life is driven differently, but to die well, one of those criteria is not how successful you are in life. And that became very clear to me. So what are those messages? What are the things that are truly important? And that's love, that's compassion, that's forgiveness. That's just, it's your friendships, it's the community, it's the sharing that's important. But nobody will tell you at the end about how big their house is, or how much money they made, or how many awards they got, in their lifetime. It doesn't happen. So I think, when we live most of our life thinking, this is what we should be doing. And then at some point in the middle of my life, it was death of my parents. And again, parents, and for those of you that are mothers, it's like you realize, it's like my job doesn't end as a parent when my kids turn 22 and I put them through school. It's a lifelong thing. We learn from our parents throughout our lives, and we continue to teach others, whether it's our children or our families or our friends. But it's through that sharing and through those relationships, and with that love as the basis of everything, that really continues. That's all that's important. So it helped to shape my life. Death helped to shift my priorities from career, and it helped me to put my focus and energy in developing myself personally. And when I say develop myself personally, I think most importantly, it's becoming the best person I can be, becoming a better person. Because that is, at the end of the day, that's what allows you to die well. And that's what allows you to connect to the next world. It's that connection of love. If you don't have love, there's no connection.
Wow, wow, wow. It's so amazing. I mean, when I'm hearing this, it's like having a date with someone who's full of life. Though your title is Death and Life, but it feels as if you've really understood the mantra of living life well. It's not the crowns and the jewels that's going to get you far. It's how you feel inside and what you're going to get to this world that's going to stay here. Would anybody like to ask her a question here? Because then I move to the next. Because it's nice if we can connect right there. Then when the stuff is happening, then losing a thought pattern and then going back to it. So anybody wants to ask a question here, or has a sharing to do? Maybe they lost a parent or someone, and maybe they learned from their mom and dad something. Would you like to share over here? Say something. Okay, I'm waiting. Nobody. No sharing. I love the smiles, but I would really like it if people would, put in a little word maybe, and if you agree with her, maybe you can unmute and even tell her that. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'd like, oh, sorry, two people at once. Go ahead, Elena.
Okay, thank you, Susan. This is really so profound. I'm sending greetings from Mexico to my dear friend Susan. I just think this is so deep, everything you've talked about. But when you are in when you are in the moment, when you are being successful in your career, and when the values of at work are a lot of times different, it's like you must achieve, and you must carry on the goals of the company and all that, and and sometimes it kind of crossed with being like understanding human. I mean, have you discovered that is there a way to keep the right balance, between being a loving person and being a competitive person with the actual values that a lot of companies demand from, a lot of times you have to give personal time to the objectives of the company, and you have a team that works for you, and if you don't achieve, sometimes you perhaps can't be as understanding. So if you can comment on that, and if you have how can we balance the life between these two objectives of being loving, and at the same time being successful, because we're still in a human world where we need to work and etc. So I think a point is there.
What a
Yeah.
beautiful question. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Elena. It's I think first of all, I think things are going to be changing because of the pandemic, and I feel that people are going to make choices from the inside rather than just on the outside. And I mean this from a career perspective, that I think there's going to be more flexibility for people working 3 or 4 days a week, being able to work remotely, and the ability to shift careers from one time to the other. But the way I managed my career with my personal life, and able to marry my husband and have 2 beautiful kids, was by ensuring that my priority was always my family, and secondly, it's my career. But so if it didn't make sense for me to continue with a company, I would quit and I would move to another one. And I realized, I think there was only one time in my entire career that I actually left for another job, because I knew that another job would come about. And it usually was a growth position. I mean, I always moved, but at one point, it was my mom. I remember I was in Mexico City and I was general manager of the Fiesta Americana Hotel. And my mother came down to visit me. And she said before she left, Susie, I think that you're putting your career over your children, and I think they need you more. Now, she had never given me career advice at all before, ever. But she was telling me that my children maybe needed me more than the hotel industry did. So I actually quit the next week, because my priorities were very, very clear. That, and that's when I started my consulting. And my consulting business was successful. And then we moved to Miami. And when I looked for a job, I figured, okay, my kids are at a different level. I want a job that's not traveling. So I managed a health club in downtown Miami when we moved, with the intention of seeing, my parents and their kids seeing their grandkids more. I realized that didn't work because it really wasn't at my level. And I thought it was a little bit, it didn't make me happy. So I said, I can travel, but I married somebody who has flexibility. And so we alternated times when we travel. But it's finding flexibility and doing what you need to do, always protecting your priorities. Now, in terms of the values, I have left companies because they didn't fit my value system. So that was why it was easy for me to leave that job. And I shouldn't mention hotel names, because there's several of you that are probably in the hospitality industry. And I don't want to go back that I didn't like any place, because I think everything I've done in my career has been positive. But there have been a couple of companies that have not fit my value system, or my, I just didn't enjoy working there. And so I've always left, and I've left for something else that has seemed to work. I think when you're kids, for those of you with kids, it's like they need different things at different times. So, I was fine as general manager of a resort hotel, because the maids could bring them in. I could see them every lunch. They were that, it didn't work for a city hotel. I had to leave. Consulting gave me more flexibility. And then I moved into a job where I could travel, because my husband had that flexibility of being home. So it's finding the ways, but never, my advice would be, never stick with a job that you absolutely hate and that you don't enjoy working with the people, and you're taking the decisions that you don't like. I think there are many jobs that are out there that are fulfilling and growing, and the people that I worked with in preferred hotels, I can't say, I worked 12 years with the same company. I can't say that I was 100% in agreement with everything, but there are so many of the people that I've worked with that are really good friends now. So instead of looking at a company as just a company with a structure, you really look at the friendships that you build. And when I was a boss, and I think, Elena, you probably know me a little bit as a boss, kind of, even though we never worked together. I mean, I was pretty tough. And, I demanded a high level of excellence. But the people that I worked with, for extended, they're all friends. Laura, you're here. We work for Hyatt together. I'll have to say, Laura, you should share something about going, because in Uxmal, and Elena, you're in Merida right now. So I don't think the two of you have met, but it was my first time to Uxmal. We were on a Hyatt trip, and it was Laura who said, we should stay in the bat cave a little bit longer, because these bats have real positive energy. And I said, what? Bats? And she said, yeah, and Uxmal is like the third highest energy center of all of the ruins throughout the world. It's like a hugely, and we were with probably 40 people on a bus, but we stayed afterwards. And it was Laura who made me sit and just kind of with the bats and feel the energy. So, it's like, connecting with you at that point. I didn't understand energy, but I didn't think you were crazy either. And I knew that there was something more. So, everything we do in life, we're meant to meet the people that we do, and we're meant to experience and learn from each other. And that was a long answer, Elena.
Thank you so much for that. There was someone else also who was asking a question or wants to do sharing. Laura, would you want to share something?
Well, not just, I remember that trip very, very well. I remember that moment, and I remember how easy it was. I think we have been working in the same company and being in touch almost daily over the phone at the time. There was no email or anything yet. But we always connected somehow with Susan, and for some reason, I felt that I could share what I felt at that moment. And at those times, it was a little bit weird to have this sort of path of learning of call, trying to find out, because I was seeking. I'm always seeking. I'm still seeking, but I think I now found a path. But at the time I was really seeking, and I'll always remember that very particular moment. It was a beautiful, beautiful hot day in the middle of a crazy week. Well, with all sorts of people. There were lots of people on that course that we did. And but we always connected, and we always connected through life. And I think that that's the beauty of this industry. And I totally agree that you can't possibly build anything, and especially work, if you don't connect with people. And those who work in the travel industry and the hotel industry, we are very fortunate to work with very, very interesting people, a bunch of versatile people. And the beauty of technology allows us to keep in touch and to arrive to moments like this. And extremely grateful. I have a question for you, Susan. When you were talking about your dad, I mean, we talked about that before, but I never asked you. Your mom didn't know either, because I understand he couldn't tell his children. But what about your mom?
Thank you for that question.
I don't know if she ever knew or not. I'll never know.
Because it's interesting in terms of a relationship, of communication, of how much she knew about him, especially to get to the point where the books fell, for example. Maybe he didn't tell her and she knew. Who knows? But you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
Wow, I can smell honesty.
Sharon, Anu,
Yes.
Sharon had a question.
Okay.
Well, I didn't have a question, but I've connected with Susan a few times, and I just want to say that, with her amazing soul, and we've exchanged about having similar experiences. So, Susan, I have the greatest respect for you, for your parents, and yeah, we connect. We've connected in more than one way. So thank you for writing your story. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Wonderful. So I have my last question for you, Suzanne. And right now we are still going through the pandemic. There is second wave, third wave, all kinds of waves going on. My country in last few days, in last few months, I know of so many people who have died. I'm just closing my eyes there because I feel pain. A lot of children in my country today are without parents and a lot of parents probably have lost their children. And you brought a very interesting aspect of life and death. These small things that parents do that we probably take it for granted and we don't even look at it as they're doing something. But in my experience, the minute your father or mom is not there, something moves, something shifts, and you know it's different, even if you didn't stay with them, even if you didn't live with them. I want to know from you, what is the message that you would like to give people, my country and other countries, where people are losing people? Is there anything that, because you don't have both your parents, and that's not an easy place to be in, is there something that you can say to them which could hold them together? Thank you. Really grateful.
Great question. I think grief is, it's different for everybody. The most important message that is universal for everybody going past that they need to know is that love is the foundation for life and love goes beyond. So whoever you may lose, that bond continues. The bond is shared. It doesn't go away. It's not material. So that foundation of love goes beyond. Now, if anyone is losing somebody and still in the process, they have not died yet, I would ask them to have those bold conversations. You know, talk, ask questions, share what maybe you've never shared before. Because as you get closer to death, it's the sharing that counts. And if you don't ask the questions, you may not ever get the answers. And even if you ask the question and you don't get the answer, you'll be allowed to have closure. But if you have a loved one on this earth that you think you're going to be losing shortly, make sure you share fully, openly, and with your heart, with the bond of love, and knowing that anything you say doesn't really matter. It's what exists among you and that love that you have. And forgiveness, in the case of my father, was very, very important. I didn't realize I had the power to forgive him, and he believed that he was peaceful because I forgave him. And so have those conversations. If you don't have those conversations, you don't know what you're missing, and that will help your own closure. I think if for those that have passed already, to be able to how to handle it, I think it's lean into the pain. It's okay. You know, it's okay to be hurt, to be sad, to be angry, to be anxious. Whatever it is you're feeling, lean into it. You have to go through that process, and you'll come out of it. You know, you'll come out of it adjusting your life in small ways as you're able, you know, and then you may even reinvent your life, you know, in the way in which you're able. But give it time and know the person is always with you, because the bond of love is never broken. But let yourself grieve and allow yourself to continue to communicate and continue to grow. And you can communicate if you want to. You know, you won't necessarily receive messages or see messages. You know, it isn't something that you can say, you know, I want to see the books falling, and they won't just fall as a result of that. But if you have the intention, you're open and you're aware, you'll see little messages, and they'll just be little messages that allow you to know that that bond of love is still there, and it always will be.
Wow. And I really want to say that was the last one, but when you were speaking, I'm like, the last very question before we say, you know, call it evening. If you hadn't written what you have written, what difference would it have made in your life? Simply, what change, what transformation do you think happened because you were able to put this down, pen it down, write it in a book? How did that transform you? Thank you.
Well, writing allowed me to bring it out and to begin to share. And I will say I wouldn't have shared it probably if it hadn't been for these 14 other women with which I wrote I Am Every Woman. And Claudia calling me and bringing us together, you know, because over the course of the year, we shared our stories. And I realized that every woman was sharing her story openly, candidly, courageously, and just allowing herself to be completely vulnerable. And there's a strength to that. You know, once you allow yourself to do that in a place where people hold space for each other. And I you know, before we did this, before we started our, you know, weekly readings to each other and communications, you know, by way of Zoom, I didn't really know what holding space meant. It's like, how do you hold space for other people? But it's really clear to me now that in doing that, we allow ourselves to be bold. We allow ourselves to be courageous. And when we do that, I mean, I was scared coming on and talking with you, and it's like, because I don't usually talk about this anymore. But now, you know, this is something that it's changed my comfort level. I can now, writing about it and sharing with the group of women that we did and publishing it. And now, Anu, speaking with you and having you ask me all these questions. And I feel, honestly, I feel fantastic for having shared. And it's a wonderful feeling. So how it makes me different or what this is going to change for me in the future, I don't really know. But I think I'm more open to those conversations. And just like what I tried to demonstrate in the story is have those conversations, you know, with your parents or with your loved one before they go. Do we really need to wait? You know, let's have those conversations now. And, you know, that's what we're doing, and writing with this amazing group of courageous, wonderful, loving women who all held space for each other only allowed us to be stronger ourselves. So it's all part of the learning journey, I'd say, but it's been fantastic. And Anu, I just love your questions. I mean, they're so direct and to the point, and you know, you're such a loving soul, and you know, I love your smile, and it's just fantastic that Anya, you were able to bring us together and allow us to do this. It's been a fantastic experience for me. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne. You have really brought in certain things, like saying that family is the most important. To talk, have conversations. This is something that will stay with me. And I think after 2 meetings, I can call you my friend.
Absolutely.
And I really thank Anya and Claudia for, you know, doing what they have done. And it's just amazing. You all are so amazing. So I will invite everybody from here to ask questions if you have any. To, if you don't have questions, if you have any sharing to do, if you want to say something to Suzanne, because it's sometimes not just enough to hear people. It's also very important to acknowledge them.
Hi
Susan?
everyone.
Yes.
I can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm so inspired and so touched by everything Susan is saying. And I mean, I normally never share things because I'm a very rather close person. My co-authors and friends and sisters here, they know that. But still, I'm trying to find some courage to tell you something, to share something with you that probably also resonates with everything what Susan has been telling us tonight about, you know, life and death and what happens before, in between, and after. My mom was also, she also passed away because she also was, she has a terminal cancer. And we had quite some intensive conversations before she passed away. And there's one thing, one of the things that I was shocked, impressed, but on the other hand, also so grateful for, is that at some point I was so much hoping to get a confirmation from her when she was still alive that we would be in touch after she's gone. And I remember I said to her, send me a message. Tell me something, do something, because I feel so much the need to know that we're still together, even when I can physically not see you anymore. And then I, in one of those conversations, I said to her, Mom, you know, you don't believe in Mother Mary, and I do. And I have been, you know, being a strong believer and devoted to Mother Mary since I was 7 years old. And I said to her, when you're gone, I just want to know if it's real, if Mother Mary exists, because you know we pray, we think that we're doing the right thing and that we are believing in the right things, but I have never received any confirmation from any source whatsoever that Mother Mary is there and that my prayers really reach her. And my mother does not never, but she never really believed anything in terms of Mother Mary. She believed in Christ and in God and all this stuff, but Mother Mary for her was nothing special. But for me it was, and I wanted to know, you know, something more about whether I was wrong or I was right to believe that Mother Mary would be there. And then the second thing I said to her is, I do know that you will be leaving with a very sadness in your heart, because you're going to leave your little daughter all by herself here on planet Earth. And then I said to her, but as I'm so convinced and so devoted to Mother Mary, do know that I'm not all by myself. I have her as a mother. So if you're not here, I know that she's with me anyway. And if I don't happen to be in touch with you, I do know that at least she might be in touch with me. And a couple of weeks later, after she passed away, I was at a reunion, a get-together with a small group of people, and there was a gentleman sitting there. And this gentleman, I saw him, I think once or twice, but I don't know who he was, and I didn't really talk to him. And by coincidence that evening, he said to me, how are you doing? I said, well, I'm feeling a bit sad. My mom just passed away, and okay. He didn't ask much, but he kept looking around him in a very special way. And then at some moment he said to me, your mom wants me to tell you that she's with Mother Mary and she's okay, and you have no reason why to have your doubts. And I was so shocked. And as I speak and I tell this now, I get my goosebumps again. I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? My mom just came back to me, giving me the answer and the things that he mentioned 2 or 3 other things that I talked with my mom about, and that nobody, and even this thing about Mother Mary, I didn't talk about it with anybody, not even with my daughter, nobody. So later on, when I came back to my common senses, I said to this gentleman, I just want to know, how do you know that? And then he said, well, sometimes I get messages, or call it a medium, whatever you want to call it. He said, but that's what I wanted you to know, because I was asked to tell you. And for me, that was like it gave me so much peace to know that when our beloved ones and our relatives who we are so deeply connected with, and when they're gone, they're still with us for some reason, or in some ways. I don't know how it works, but that's what I wanted to share with you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful sharing. Anybody else would like to share? before I ask Anya to close the session down? Anybody would like to share, say something? Okay. I am very, 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 very grateful. I really am. And I'm not going to say anything more. Over to Anya.
Susan, thank you very, very much for starting our conversation of I am every woman. So the next 14 weeks, we will continue. And Anu, thank you for having this gift to ask the right questions. And for my part, I lost my mom 1.5 years, no, 2 years now back. And she passed away while I was in Mumbai. And today I have regrets that I was not with her. So see you all next Wednesday. And thank you for being here. And the journey continues. I am every woman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you,
Yeah, Anya.
Anu. Thank you,
Thank you.
Susan. Lovely to see everybody.
Next week, Wednesday night at 10 o'clock at India time and whatever time it is in your countries.
It's
So
getting very late there. It's time for bed. Yeah.
No, Anu and I are up until 2 in the morning Indian time. We chat.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good evening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.